Detroit 111, Cleveland 101. The Pistons take a 1-0 lead in their second round series, which definitely a good start. Off to a lot better start than the Pistons got off to in their last round against the Orlando Magic, where they dropped the opening game. So you get the job in game one. Of course, we're going to be talking about game two a little bit later with the importance of having to take that 2-0 lead. You don't want Cleveland to steal one of those games and then they have the home court advantage right back and we're in another situation like the Orlando Magic series, but Pistons can't have too many complaints in this first game, and this is a pretty much complete opposite of that Orlando Magic series where it was the Magic that got off and running. They had a hot start, and the Pistons were trying to play catch-up the entire game. Well, that was not the case in this one. The Pistons able to build a early lead in this one across the really towards the end of the first quarter. That's when they had their largest lead of the game, 18 points. So they played very well, but the Cavs, they did get it going. The Cavs played a lot better, not only to close the first quarter, but also through the second and third quarters. Playing very well, made it a very close game in the end of the third quarter and then through the entire fourth quarter. The Pistons just couldn't really seem to shake Cleveland fully, couldn't really get rid of them until obviously they eventually won the game. But it was by no means a comfortable win. This was a battle. This is what you got to expect this point in the playoffs, second round and onward. The majority of the time, and it's gonna be tough. These series are gonna be competitive unless you're that one stacked team. I think the OKC and Lakers series can be like this. A one-sided affair in the second round. Potentially Knicks 76ers, but I could still see the 76ers picking it up for at least a game or two in that. But no, this series I think is going to be a battle. And pretty interesting game, though, considering the fact yesterday. I expect this to be a little bit more of a high-scoring series than this. 111-101, I guess, makes sense at face value based on the level of defense that the Pistons have been playing, not only during the regular season, but in the playoffs as well. Able to limit the effectiveness of Cleveland early, in big part by the turnovers that they were forcing. That's a huge sign of improvement for this Pistons team. That was one of their main red flags throughout that Orlando Magic series, in big part of what put them into that 3-1 hole to begin with, was the turnovers. Not only were they committing a ton of turnovers, I mean, they were forcing a lot of turnovers from the Magic as well, but the Magic's ability to capitalize on pretty much every single Pistons turnover, that was a huge problem for this Pistons team. But that was a huge part of the Pistons game last night. Forced 20 turnovers, a lot of those in the first half. The Cavs were very sloppy, and that turned into 31 Pistons points off of those 20 turnovers. In comparison, Pistons turned the ball over 12 times themselves, and that only turned into 16 points for the Cavaliers. So not nearly as much of an impact. Now, the turnovers did become a little bit more of a problem later in the game as the Cavs were making that late push to try to get back into this thing. But overall, it was that turnover differential that was probably the biggest difference maker in this game. But otherwise, pretty decent three-point shooting for both teams. The Cavs, we already knew going in, they're a lot more three-point heavy. But they made 4 more threes on 12 more shots. I mean, that's 33%, so not great at face value. But overall, 38% for the Pistons, 37% for the Cavs. But the rest of the game, a bit of a struggle. 44% for the Pistons overall, 45% for the Cavs. And it's that paint domination, that paint battle that I had as a big key in this series. Obviously, the Pistons, great paint presence with Jalen Duren on both sides of the floor. Asar Thompson, I think, could slide over, get some stops from the opposing big men, which we did see last night, a steal and a block from him as well. Nice transition block as well from Asar Thompson. Tobias Harris, not necessarily a guy that can defend other big guys, especially the big guys on the Cavaliers, which good on the Pistons to really limit their effectiveness, especially Jarrett Allen, only 2 points on 1 of 4 shooting. 3 rebounds, 1 assist, good stuff to limit his effectiveness there, especially only 3 rebounds is quite impressive as well. How does your point guard, James Harden, get 8 rebounds and then your center get 3? That's crazy stuff. But Evan Mobley, he's another terrific big man, 14 points, 9 rebounds, not as effective as he could potentially be in this series. But at the same time, mostly neutralized Jalen Duren, at least in terms of the scoring. And I think Jalen Duren is not necessarily the guy in general that can go and get his own shots, set up his own opportunities. I mean, if he has the right matchup, we can see him backing guys down and, doing some of these post moves, some of these hooks, sure. But he's not necessarily the guy who's as offensively gifted as some other top-scoring big men where he can go one-on-one against some of these other big guys and get his shots. That's just not the Jalen Duren that this team has been relying on. Jalen Duren gets the majority of his points on, crashing the boards, getting those lobs, back cuts and such. And that's what we saw last night, especially key stretch in the fourth quarter, Cavs cutting it close, and the Pistons able to go back up basically double digits, around 7 or 8 points. Nice little run where it was like 2 or 3 lobs in a row from Cade Cunningham to Jalen Duren. I think that was a defining stretch in the game for this Pistons team in trying to put away the Cavs and get some breathing room, try to get this win. But Jalen Duren, 11 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists with 2 blocks, but just 4 of 11 shooting. So, and we did see that. I mean, good to see him at least trying to shoot a little bit more often than in the Cleveland Cavaliers series, because that was a big reason of his scoring drop-off, is he just straight up wasn't even really shooting the ball. Meanwhile, Cade Cunningham, although a rough shooting performance, 6 of 19 from the floor, good job at getting to the free throw line, 9 of 11 from the free throw line. 23 points, 7 assists, and 3 rebounds, although unfortunately the 4 turnovers, I'm not really liking that number as well compared to the 7 assists. But Cade Cunningham, I mean, solid enough game, at least. But how about Duncan Robinson? He easily had his best game of the postseason. Finished with 19 points, 7 of 12 from the floor, had a couple nice floaters in there, 5 of 8 from 3. And when Duncan Robinson's hitting his shot, that's when it really spaces out the floor, because really, I don't know how much more you can beat a dead horse here, but the three-point shot, it's no secret, not a big part of this Pistons team. And when you bring on a guy like Duncan Robinson via an offseason trade, this guy has one job, and it's just to make threes. He's not an impact player on the defensive end. As a matter of fact, he's a detriment on the defensive end. And he doesn't really do anything else for you. He's not a playmaker. Again, not really a slashing scorer. He's a three-point shooter. So when he is fulfilling that role as well as he did last night, it helps space the floor for other guys like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, of course, trying to set up those lobs, space out that floor. And then Tobias Harris frees up guys like him. He likes to shoot from the mid-range as well. And it's a lot easier to shoot from the mid-range when the inside of three-point line is not as clogged, when your three-point shot is not working. But speaking of Tobias Harris, Mr. Consistent, this guy, consistent 20 points, seems like he could be relied upon in this postseason run for the Pistons. 20 points, 8 rebounds, although he has well shot poorly, 6 of 14, but 7 of 8 from the free throw line. And that brings me to the other part of the discussion for this Pistons team, really controlling the paint. Only had a slight rebound advantage, 53-47, 16-11 on the offensive rebounds. They did, however, turn those offensive rebounds into a 19-11 second chance edge. But here's the interesting one. A dead even split, 44 each team, points in the paint, which is a little bit misleading, considering the fact that the Pistons shot more than double the amount of free throws than the Cavaliers, 27 of 35 from the line compared to just 15 of 16 for the Cavs, which definitely makes sense. The Pistons are an interior team. They love to drive through the lane, get that contact, shoot a ton of free throws. And we saw this throughout the Orlando Magic series as well. And the Cavs, that's a jump shooting team. 38 threes, taking up basically half of their field goal attempts. And even beyond shooting threes, you got your guys like James Harden, Donovan Mitchell. These are jump shooters. Donovan Mitchell can slash. James Harden, not really as much anymore. He still was doing a lot of floaters late in the game when he tried to take over after a horrendous first three quarters for James Harden. But anyways, when the Pistons are the more aggressive team, you're going to be rewarded with a lot more trips to the line. And as a result, get a lot more of those free throw attempts. And that's why you see some of the larger free throw attempt numbers for some of these guys on the Pistons in this game. Now, we did get some interesting comments after the game from Donovan Mitchell claiming that he doesn't flop, so therefore he's not getting the call. So he's essentially trying to throw the Pistons under the bus for flopping, which, I don't know if you watched the game last night. I know, Donovan Mitchell, you should have been watching the game because you were on the freaking floor. But flopping? Really? This Pistons team is like the furthest team from flopping. Look at your teammate. James Harden, as a matter of fact. This guy made his living in the NBA being a flopper, trying to bait opponents into foul calls, getting trips to the line. If you want to accuse anybody of flopping, look at your own organization, buddy. So, and again, as I said, it makes sense with how much the Pistons drive through the lane, get physical, draw the contact. It's only reasonable to conclude that they're naturally going to be drawing a lot more fouls and getting a lot more trips to the free throw line. By the way, foul differential, not even that bad, 22-18, 4 more fouls committed by the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I don't know what you're going with, Donovan Mitchell, but hey, Pistons, good stuff overall. Really love the defensive side of the floor. I'm telling you, that's what helped the Pistons get back into that series against the Orlando Magic, really getting out in the open floor, running off of those not only those long misses, but every turnover especially. Take advantage of those turnovers, those fast break points, and anytime you get a long rebound, you got to have guys leaking out, and we saw that in this game last night. As I mentioned, James Harden struggling, shooting the floor 6 of 15, 22 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. So not a bad overall stat line, consider he did have 7 turnovers. So 7 assists, 7 turnovers, that's an awful ratio right there. But he really didn't show up until that fourth quarter. He really tried to put the team on his back. But, couldn't really get things going in the first 3 quarters. Donovan Mitchell, 23 points, 9 of 19 shooting, which isn't horrible. 4 of 10 from 3, which is a pretty good number. 4 rebounds and 2 assists. But the big key was Max Strus, 19 points off the bench on 7 of 13 shooting. He was a big impact off the bench for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. So, moving forward in this series, I do expect to see Cleveland maybe try to slow things down, get a little bit less sloppy with the ball, because the Pistons are absolutely killing the Cavs in the fast break points and the points off turnovers and such. So, that was the biggest reason the Pistons were able to build a huge first quarter lead to begin with, was the sloppy play of the Cavs and taking advantage with easy scores on the other end. So, in Game 2, tomorrow night, I would expect the Cavs to try to clean that up, limit those turnovers, try to settle in quicker offensively. Because if you ignore that first quarter, it was a very close game the rest of the way between these teams. And, the Cavs were right there within striking distance, besides that little lob run between Cunningham and Duren. Built up that lead back up enough to where you get a little bit of breathing room to ride that thing on towards the win. So Pistons, they have to play very well in this second game if they want to get this win. I'm telling you, it's important. They got to try to go into Cleveland up 2-0, because I don't know if my heart can take it. Going through another series where you lose one of the first 2 games and you're going on the road now with the Cleveland Cavaliers with the home court advantage. I don't want to try to go through that again. Pistons got to be the enforcers, got to go up 2-0, and then you're in a point where you could try to steal at least one of the two games on the road and try to take a 3-1 lead coming back home for Game 5, and then just like that, you can close out this series. I don't think this is going to be a 5-game series, but the Pistons, if they can keep playing great defense, forcing those turnovers, getting those easy scores, and when you have guys like Duncan and Robinson shooting lights out from 3, then Pistons can really have the upper hand pretty quickly in this series, like we saw last night. Again, Game 2 is coming up tomorrow from Little Caesars Arena. Live coverage right here on Jackson's Fox Sports 101.9 FM.
If you missed today's installment of On the Docket, podcast it at foxsports1019.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to tune in live weekdays at noon on Jackson's Fox Sports 101.9 FM.